Guess this will do. Ah, ahoy! Well, here we have it. It's finally time for God of War Ragnarok, and I wonder if Velbos has figured out if I moved out yet.
Where the hell is everything?
When starting God of War Ragnarok, it gives you an option to have a recap of the events of 2018, which I will use as an excuse to give my own recap, because I have some things to address. God of War 2018 was a game I disliked because of how much of a downgrade gameplay-wise it was to the series beforehand. I was extremely disappointed by Santa Monica's decision to put all of its eggs in the story basket rather than making a balanced experience. The storytelling was sensational, but to me that's not enough to make a great game. In my recent video on God of War 2018, I feel like I did a splendid job listing a bunch of valid complaints that the game had that no negative comment tried to counter any of. Simply put, you suck, 2018 is perfect. Can you tell I'm salty? Listen, you want to blow the game like it paid for your college tuition? Go for it. If you love the game and think it's a masterpiece, I'm glad you did. I didn't. Let me remind you that the internet is not a place where we all get together and make sure we have the same opinion.
Anyway, let's talk about God of War Ragnarok. I put off playing it when it released in 2022 because considering how overwhelmingly positive 2018 was received, I was so sure they weren't going to change much and I didn't want to find myself complaining about the same things again.
But you know what? It wasn't. When I finished God of War Ragnarok, I had a generally positive experience on it. I thought it was much better than 2018. I was like, hell yeah, I'm finally on the good side of this franchise again. Let's see what other people said. And to my not surprise, the people who loved 2018 thought Ragnarok was the lesser title. And the few people on my little island of disliking 2018 thought Ragnarok was worse.
Looks like no matter what, I'm always gonna be pissing this community off.
Oh well, let's see if I can explain why and how I think Ragnarok is better than 2018, that I'm sure people will still ignore and tell me that I suck. Damn it. How'd you find me?
You moved to another state?
You saw what was happening, we got snowed out. And you left me there? In all fairness, I didn't want you there in the first place. But still, it doesn't matter. I played and finished God of War Ragnarok while I was moving, and I really enjoyed it. So we don't need to do this.
You son of a bitch, you played it without me!
And notice by doing that, I enjoyed it more. And what's this I hear about you saying that Ragnarok is better than 2018? I do, but isn't the fact that I love Ragnarok more important than me thinking that it's better than 2018? No! As your PR guy, I need you to stop saying stupid shit.
I thought you were my guardian angel.
Well, clearly you need a PR guy. I clearly need a restraining order. Let's go. See if you can explain yourself out of this one. Watch me.
So I want to tackle this in the same order I did last time, so let's start with story and how that affects gameplay. So Ragnarok starts with Kratos and Atreus in Midgard, 3 Fimbulwinters after the events of the previous game where we start off the events that will lead to Ragnarok, which is both a great film and the end of times for Norse mythology. So Kratos and Atreus have to navigate their way through all 9 realms this time as they prepare for war on Asgard, and we gotta deal with Odin and the other gods trying to prevent that. So there's a lot going on in the story, and I want to simply break it down by the internal story and the external story. The external story is the big overlapping plot that drives everything else. In Ragnarok, it's, well, Ragnarok, getting ready for the end of the world. In 2018, it was just getting to a mountain to spread ashes of someone we didn't know and getting constantly sidetracked.
I wonder which one's more compelling.
I'm not gonna argue that the concept of the 9 realms going to war with each other isn't more epic than the funeral service, but it's a different type of story. God of War Ragnarok is an epic adventure, while God of War 2018 was more of an emotional tale. It'd be like trying to compare The Notebook to Avatar. With 2018, the story between Kratos and Atreus was the big thing there. I was hoping you'd say that.
The internal story is the more intimate part, what the character arcs are between the characters. In 2018, it was simply put Kratos and Atreus learning to accept each other, which was basically them getting angry at each other because Atreus doesn't listen and Kratos just grunts all the time. In Ragnarok, it was them realizing how much they mean to each other and the frustration that comes from that. Atreus is frustrated because he learns about his destiny as Loki and being an integral part in Ragnarok, yet he doesn't know what he's supposed to do because Kratos doesn't necessarily believe in prophecy and doesn't encourage going into it. Yet Ragnarok is literally coming, and Atreus even learns that there's a prophecy of his father dying and him joining Odin, and now he has to try to prevent that. Online, I see people dump on Atreus for his actions and decisions, but I'm more empathetic. He's f***ing 11, guys, and he has all that to deal with? Me at age 11 would have panic attacks trying to choose between Nacho and Cool Ranch.
Cool Ranch all the way.
Now don't get me wrong, I do have some hate for Atreus reserved in the sense that playing a section of the game were like drinking cold piss, so we'll get to that later. But I did not mind how his story was written. But let's get to Kratos now. He, on the other hand, wants to protect his son from the horrors of war. He doesn't want any of this. He's seen what happens when you go into conflict with gods, and yet here he is watching his son very well going down the same path. He doesn't want to stop Atreus from being his own man, but he also doesn't want Atreus to make the same mistakes he did. Kratos has been aware of his death prophecy since the last game, and you can sense that he wants to spend as much time with his son as he can and protect him. It was during a side quest when Atreus asked Kratos why he's so willing to help him with these tasks while there's bigger fish to fry, and it took Mimir basically saying, "Hey, dumb f***, he's trying to spend time with you." That hit me in the feels.
Tissue?
But besides Atreus, Kratos even has this happen with Freya. They both very well have their own personal story where they share their pain and experiences of vengeance, and Freya comes to learn to forgive Kratos for killing her son after spending the first chunk of the game trying to kill him. I always found myself enjoying the time spent playing with Freya more than Atreus because I loved hearing them process each other's trauma. That's 2 intimate character arcs compared to 1.
The numbers don't lie.
But let's now talk about Kratos himself. Kratos in this game is so much more vocal and articulates how he feels or what he's thinking, which makes it more compelling to listen to. In the last game, he just grunted most of the time. I truly wonder how his VA auditions went.
Okay, Mr. Judge, you may proceed with your audition. We love it.
Now, what God of War 2018 did accomplish was in the weight of everything Kratos said. He was a closed book, and every time he slightly cracked it open to spill something about his past, it was exciting. Here, though, it's now completely open, and he's talking about his daughter Calliope, brother Deimos, his Spartan training, the cost of vengeance, burning Olympus to the ground, and it was great stuff. And it's so much better than 2018 Kratos representing Team HMM in this year's Olympics.
Huh, they didn't make a Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games this year. I know, isn't it great?
And this affects gameplay in the sense that I can accept this Kratos here wanting to do side quests for characters like Freya and Mimir, because these are his allies who stick around because he's so used to anyone he tolerates dying. And wanting to do side quests with Atreus because he wants to spend as much time with him before whatever happens, happens. It feels more natural than it did in 2018. Now there is still a bit of clunk in the sense that, end of the world is around the corner, so let's help this spirit find his brooch.
Christ, Velbo, someone's trying to break in. Can you tie my shoe?
But other ways the story affects gameplay is the fact that Kratos and Atreus kind of branch off on their own at times, which led to them having their own story beats accomplished, which really helped move the story along. Now, it wasn't perfect. The story had many faults. A lot of Atreus' sections blew hard, Odin's voice actor wasn't great, and during more intense moments the VA was really off-putting, and the entire ending sequence felt rushed and unfulfilling. The premise was uniting all 9 realms' armies against Asgard, yet we only went to get Surtur from Muspelheim, while the rest of the team went to gather the armies from the other realms, which hey, makes sense, go do your parts guys. But I don't feel like we did enough to want the other realms to join in. Our entire time spent in Alfheim was killing all the light and dark elves, but hey, send this one dude and they are suddenly willing to join us? It's a bit too easy. But anyway, when the realms did join us, they all got written off in 5 minutes, and another one didn't even show up. Not necessarily the epic Avengers Assemble moment I was expecting. Yes, the Ragnarok part in a game titled Ragnarok blew. Besides that, overall, the story was a lot of fun, a lot of twists and turns, and I always found myself wanting to find out what happens next, which is better than 2018 because in that game, at most it was, what the f is gonna interrupt us next?
There's some saying in show business that if your entire show sucked, it's at least important to nail the ending. Ragnarok's Ragnarok kinda sucked. But with 2018, the entire finale against Baldur was fucking awesome, and beforehand had a pretty steady killer story throughout. Unlike the jumbled mess that Ragnarok was at times. Oh yeah, between the two games, 2018 definitely had the better ending. But here's the thing, this isn't a film that can get away with dragging its feet for an hour and a half before having a stellar 15 minutes to wrap everything up. These are video games that sometimes take between 20 to 50 hours, and having to drag my feet through 2018's story just to get to one awesome finale isn't worth it. With Ragnarok, that at least had awesome moments throughout. Awesome moments throughout, you'd say? I know. I'll get to that later. But in the meantime...
The cinematic camera. See, I gave the one-shot camera its props in 2018, but right here in Ragnarok, I think it's outstayed its welcome. Now, this isn't me complaining about the lack of epic cinematic moments again. If anything, the game solved that issue. It had a handful of awesome moments happening in the background while I'm playing the game. It doesn't necessarily have to affect me, just create a chaotic environment. Stuff like Thor fighting the world serpent in the background is great, the battle against the Hellhound gave me such Hydra vibes, and when we were in Alfheim in the middle of a battle between light and dark elves and we were just fighting off anybody who tries to square up, regardless of which side, that was awesome!
See, that's all I wanted! But now, where the one-shot cinematic camera angle fails is when it comes to pacing and fully capturing intense moments.
Let's do pacing first. This commitment to having it all be one shot kinda prevents there from being time lapses where they surely could have been useful. My best example is this wall climb in Asgard when Atreus first gets there. It was boring. It felt like the game was just bloating the experience, which is unnecessary in a game this long that could have used time dedicated to other aspects, i.e. assembling an army. Thing is, it's an impressive climb, and I thought this was Atreus' climbing Pandora's temple on Kronos' back moment. It was an impressive feat by Kratos, and it was done by showing the scale, epic music, having a voiceover tell us it took him 3 days, and showing us him getting to the top. Perfectly done! Chef's kiss! Here though, it's making us do it, and it's such an unexciting part of the game because it's again platforming that's largely done for you, and there's no danger of falling. So I don't feel like I scaled the mountain and endured risk. It's a moment that I feel would have benefited from a short cutscene showing a quick montage of Atreus climbing before reaching the top. Maybe a large zoom out to really show the scale, but it can't do that because it has to do this one-take camera system and it's getting in the game's way. Which is odd because I thought early in the game it somewhat bends the rules when the story would call for it, like when we first met Thor and the camera cuts multiple times as it zoomed in. It was an epic introduction, the camera cuts contributed to it.
It's also why I guess we couldn't get that epic assembly of realms scene I was expecting. Because, how? How can you zoom out and show all the 9 armies storming from all the 9 realms? Well, that's why I think this camera system sucks for an epic adventure.
And before you say anything, Velbos, let me just say I know you're about to say that the camera's more for the internal story than the external. Well, I have just the counter argument for you.
You had a lot of time to think about what you wanted to say, huh? I know, isn't it great?
The camera is made more for the emotional aspect of the story. Well, f that. It fails too. The face is an incredible thing. You can tell a whole story with it. Video games look so good and character models are so realistic these days that they can accomplish this feat. And God of War looks so good that when you see a character's face, you can read a novel of emotions off of it. But that's when you see their face. The problem with the one camera system was whenever there's a conversation, you oftentimes are staring at the back of somebody's head and it misses the mark of having someone's face also tell a story. My biggest gripe came, and I'll try to tell us in a non-spoiler version by having me and Felbus reenact it.
Wait, what?
Was when one important character gets betrayed and killed by another important character. We don't see the first important character's face during it, or when he's reaching out for a loved one before disappearing out of frame, and it's so unfulfilling. Had we seen their face, it would have added to it. What emotion is the character experiencing? But just watching the back of their head disappear made what was an important character to the plot feel wasted.
You are right with how important the face is when it comes to telling the story, but body language is too. Going, oh my god, and oh my god are 2 different things. In scenes like where Kratos sees a prophecy of people worshipping him for saving the realms, he breaks down and you see it with how his hands and body tremble. Yes, and the face showing it too would have pushed that scene the extra mile. The scene of him from the DLC going on a monologue of who he is as a god was so powerful because we see his words and thoughts in his face as well. And now it's probably the greatest monologue in gaming.
Using DLC is cheating.
And it's better than in 2018 because I can't recall a single emotional moment we saw in Kratos' face. When he finds the pot in Greece, when he thinks he sees Zeus in Helheim, these moments where one would have such complex emotions would have been great to see on his face. But we didn't! Only time we got to see Kratos' face was when he was angry. Here with Ragnarok, I feel like I see so much more of Kratos.
Puzzle solving and platforming was the big one that I felt saw the biggest improvement in the game. With platforming in the previous game, it was all auto jumping and slow climbing. Here though, now at many points Kratos can quickly hookshot himself to other platforms. You can swing now again and even do some Twilight Princess double hook shots. Thing is, the lack of actual danger and skill needed when you do these things does still blow, and honestly it would have made the Atreus wall scale more fun if it had involved more player input. But the fact that it was faster is still a much needed upgrade, and it did make the parts that are slow climbs not suck as much. Plus, this new quick mobility opened up for more vertical level design with multi-levels, which opened the puzzles up too! Puzzles are way more abundant in the game and at times balance out the experience. My biggest issue with 2018 was how it just felt like one terrible fight after another with maybe an occasional one-step puzzle to solve before 6 more monotonous fights. Here though, the game really starts to throw puzzles at you in between fights at times, and it stopped the game from feeling stale or repetitive. The puzzles themselves too were better in the sense that it wasn't just find somewhere to throw your axe, job done. It was still mostly throw your axe, but it was multi-step and combining your items. One of the arrows we have in the game are magic arrows that allow you to hold one spot frozen while recalling an axe to freeze another spot. That's great! Plus, you have to think where the best spot to throw some of these things is, because it wasn't just some designated glowing spot. You had to properly place the magic sigil so you can reach something you have to burn that you can't normally reach. Find the best place to freeze a water flow to get it to pour onto the water wheel. Like, it's not hard to make a game have fun puzzles, which is why I'm so disappointed in 2018 for not doing so. Having thought-filled puzzles that I need to solve make me feel like I'm good at the game. Plus, those 3 symbol chests also got a huge upgrade. Instead of making me waste 10 minutes trying to find these things just to get a random BS RPG garbage that I don't care for, now it's exclusively apples or meat horns that increase your health or magic, which is a huge upgrade and made me actively give a shit to invest time in finding these things because I know it's an item I absolutely want. What I despised seeing in 2018 was something I looked forward to in Ragnarok.
Now, while the puzzles are great, the game does overdo it at times. I will agree that in certain places like Alfheim, the game did get a little bit too puzzle heavy, but in other parts of the game, like in Svartalfheim, Ragnarok was perfect. Puzzle fight, it felt like old God of War, and I was truly loving the game there. Now, while yes, the puzzles are a bit more layered here in Ragnarok, but it's ruined by the fact that NPCs will literally just give away the answers to you. It feels weird hearing you actually critique the game. But 2018 handled its puzzles better because it just left you alone to solve the puzzle. Oh yeah, wow, it didn't give away the one thing you had to do.
I said it in my video on 2018 that my perception of the game would have been better had puzzle solving and platforming been good. And here we are with a game that improved tremendously on these things and my perception is much better. Go figure! But let's get to the last thing on my list, which is combat. And good God of War Almighty, the game did it. I enjoyed the combat! The game within 1 hour has you start with the Leviathan Axe and Blades of Chaos, which was great. It gave me multiple weapons to work with instead of having me exhaust one early game. Eventually we get a third weapon, the Draupnir's Spear, which I personally didn't prefer during combat, but its runic attacks were f***ing amazing, and the story-based boss battle against Heimdall with it was also pretty sick. Another huge improvement is the environment. With the increased verticality in the game, it gave us layered combat encounters with enemies in high places that we didn't just have to throw our axe at, but we can now quickly jump to them and take the fight to a higher level, which breaks up the battlefield in case you want to space yourself a bit, but it also allows for us to have this awesome attack where if we drop down to a lower level or swing across a gap to another ledge, we can unleash a juicy strike. There are also environmental items we can use, such as these stones that we can fling into an enemy to inflict tons of damage, or these crystals that deflect our axe throw to stun enemies. See, something as simple as that instantly makes the game more engaging, because when I enter a fight space, I not only start analyzing the enemies in front of me, but I'm also simultaneously scanning the area for anything I could use to my advantage, like hazards or the high ground. It makes fights feel different with how the layout is, or if there isn't one. It gave the game variety, something 2018 doesn't know the meaning of. What also helped with keeping combat varied and interesting was enemy variety. They added new types of enemies that fought differently. These toad monsters that will latch into high places to spit acid at you so you have to knock them down. These glowing balls that you have to first hit with arrows to stun them. These imps that heal other enemies. These tiny lizards that swarm you. These clunky boys that spawn tiny lizards that swarm you. These Quan Chi looking mofos that attack with Bifrost. These ghouls, plants that are just environmental hazards. It's all great! There's so much! Now I will say that the game could have definitely improved how it laid them out, because while it does have a huge assortment, it doesn't rotate them too well. Like in Svartalfheim, for a while it was just either small lizards or toads, which hey, I like the new enemies, but after fighting just these things 10 times, they started to wear out their welcome. When I saw a Draugr, I was actually happy to see him because I just wanted to fight something else already.
Never thought I'd hear you say that. I know.
The game did have times later on when it did improve the enemy rotation, but it could have been a bit more thoroughly organized throughout the whole game.
But let's get to the boss battles.
God of War Ragnarok, you fucking did it! Get in the pile, you! One thing I think everybody can agree on is how Ragnarok improved the boss battles to such a degree the Richter scale can't even measure it. I think even Santa Monica Studios knows how badly they f***ed up the boss battles in 2018 that they even brought a troll back in Ragnarok just for Kratos to obliterate it in a second.
And then no troll ever appeared in the game. That felt therapeutic. I'm buying you food. It doesn't eat.
The troll battles in 2018 were so bad that when the first boss battle in Ragnarok was against a simple fucking bear, I was ecstatic! This is how low my expectations were. But even after that, the game threw such epic boss encounters at us at a large scale and sometimes very unique creatures. The Phantoms felt like such a Legend of Zelda boss battle, not only because it did actually look like one, but also because it had a puzzle element of stunning the boss first and then destroying these 3 pillars. The battles against the Norse gods were incredible and full of story. There were dragons we fought that we had to knock out of the air at times, a giant dimension opening dragon, the entire Hellhound sequence was a perfection, a fucking Valkyrie was a boss in the main story, and just you wait, at one point it was 2 Valkyries. And then we had the giant lady whose pot we had to destroy. Yes, you heard me, fucking pottery was a better boss battle than anything in 2018. It was all so good and all so epic. The side quests in the game were so much more attractive because it wasn't just loot hunting, but most of the time it would be an epic boss encounter at the end of them. I didn't even mind when they repeated boss battles because there was enough variety that they were a welcome sight. I didn't even mind seeing the Soul Eaters brought back. The boss battle was so spectacular, it made me wish the game had a function like Mario Odyssey where we can just go back and fight them again.
Yeah, I bet you got nothing to say now, huh? I mean, no, this is something that everyone can collectively agree upon. The bosses here are so much better than what they were in 2018. Yeah, thought so. But when it comes to those optional boss battles, the Valkyries are so much better than the Berserkers. I won't argue that.
So here's the thing, with these basic things of combat being much improved, it made other things that bugged me before not matter as much. The camera is still a pain, but Kratos having a bit more mobility helped that. I didn't mind it as much as the lack of XP incentivizers because combat oftentimes felt different. The game did have more types of attacks, so actual move variety also improved.
The companions we fight with didn't feel as effective as Atreus from 2018,
But I didn't mind it because I didn't need Atreus' electrical arrows to rush me through the process.
because I enjoy the combat encounters.
Even with the RPG elements I usually hate, I wasn't bothered because doing the extra shit never had me feel like I wasted time for a resource I don't know what to do with or care to do anything with. When I did a side quest, I was rewarded with an epic boss battle. When I solved a puzzle, I always got something I truly wanted. And plus, I think the armor system in the game got better too, even though I still think the concept of armor for Kratos is stupid. One last thing regarding combat I do want to comment on is the magic and health management along with the consequences of our actions. Health did not feel as overabundant here as it did in 2018. I didn't feel like I was going to overdose on healing stones. Every time I saw one, I ran to it because I needed it. They don't replenish as much and there's less of them. And with our runic attacks, it takes them much longer to recharge. It's rarely ever ready again when I enter another combat encounter. So in a battle, I had to think if I wanted to use one of my powerful attacks because I don't know if I have a tougher fight in the next room before it recharges, so I had to limit myself, and that extra forethought is something I wanted in 2018.
Sure, but one thing that was really annoying about Ragnarok is that when during combat, the NPCs just won't shut up. The dialogue they use just sounds so unnatural. It's like they know they're in a video game. Use a shield bash. You'll take damage if you stand there. Dodge that attack. It's so off-putting. Well, yes, that is true, and it very much is something I would have nitpicked if I didn't like the game's combat. But here's the thing, Ragnarok provided great combat. When the overall gameplay is fun, it makes all the little things not bug you as much. And sure, the NPC dialogue can get annoying, but here's the thing, I learned to tune them out. Just like you!
Now that I feel like I comfortably made my stake on why Ragnarok is better than 2018, do your fucking worst, but let's now talk about Ragnarok by itself and how do I think of this as a game. Well, while I do think it's a big step in the right direction overall gameplay-wise, it still isn't anything compared to the original franchise. But I'm optimistic. I didn't expect this game to improve other aspects of gameplay, and it did, so I'm hopeful it will continue with the next God of War game with one important thing that'll truly make me happy. Let me fuck up the platforming. Keep the auto jumps for the easiest difficulty.
But with having to give a rating, I give 2018 a 6 out of 10, but this I'm giving a 7 out of 10.
What the? I know, just let me.
As I was playing the game when I was roughly 6 hours in, I was ecstatic about it. I was hard leaning on giving it a 9 out of 10. The gameplay, the story, it was so engaging.
I couldn't wait to do it again. I literally was ready to play New Game Plus immediately after finishing the main story.
But the game's lows were very, very low. I'm talking Haddle Zone levels of low. 2018, I felt let the story slow down gameplay a lot, but it never did to the degree that Ragnarok did.
You don't mean Ironwood.
Ironwood has been one of the most prolonged and agonizing gaming experiences I've ever had. Playing this aged me. Basically, it was an hour and a half of slow-moving, talking, exposition, riding a buffalo, collecting apples, exposition, buffalo, talking, collecting tree branches, and buffalo. It was a sequence that was an hour and a half that did not need to be a fucking hour and a fucking half. It was so dreadful that this is what is sinking the game. What turned my initial thought of looking forward to replaying the game was instantly noped. Because not only was the ending sequence more flaccid than Valbo's,
Wait, what?
but I never, ever want to play the Ironwood part again. And not gonna lie, nearly all of Atreus' parts sucked. Which is a shame because the first time he played as him was awesome. He moved different, had long range attacks, his own specials, the companion of Sindri was hilarious. But then we got the Ironwood section, which even saying that word makes me physically angry to such a degree I'm banning this word from my vocabulary. The next section was the unnecessarily long wall climb of Asgard before we got even more expedition-filled walking and talking. And then even later the game made you go through a whole bar fight just to tell a quick story beat of Thor breaking his sobriety. It's all pandering. It's all again the strive to tell a story getting in the way of fun gameplay. And it absolutely ruined the pacing of God of War Ragnarok. The story would be moving, and then an excruciatingly long stop before moving again. Yes, the game is better than 2018, but it still only gets a 7 out of 10 because fuck I.
So there we have it. God of War Ragnarok was a really tremendous game that let its bads really f***ing kill it. But it's weird that even though I overall enjoyed my time more with God of War Ragnarok than I did with 2018, if I had to choose to replay one of these two, I think I'd rather do 2018 again. It didn't have moments that were as bad or as much of a slog to get through that Ragnarok did. With Ragnarok, I only want to replay this game until my memories of Jotunheim are completely f***ing gone. So I'll see you in 2083.
Wow, you never cease to amaze me. I know, what a complicated relationship I have with the God of War series at the moment. Yeah, the game you said is worse is the game you'd rather replay. Yeah, I don't think anyone watches my channel for my takes.
So you really never see yourself playing God of War Ragnarok again until you're senile?
Oh, no. Only the story leading up to Jotunheim. And plus, post-game sure might have some stuff for me to explore. Oh, and the Valhalla DLC definitely looks like it's right up my alley.
Speaking of DLC, have you checked out Elden Ring yet?
Oh no, not yet. But I am getting to it. But first, I have other things to take care of. Alright, it's the big one.
Nice place, by the way.
Thanks. You're not gonna leave, are you?
No. Of course not.